as well. So we want to make sure that you know that if you miss something, you can catch it later, but as well as if you do something inappropriate, we'll have it on tape. So just kind of keep that in mind, but we're not anticipating anything like that because we know you're all here to learn about different careers in education. So thank you for taking time during your day, during this crazy time to think about your future a little bit more. And I know it's hard to think about the future, like you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, no less, next year, and so on. Actually, when we were setting this up for this date, I didn't even realize it was Teacher Appreciation Week that we did this, which kind of worked out perfect. Doing a panel for careers in education during a week where we honor educators. So kind of glad that worked out. So as we wait for if any other people to come in, I'm just sort of kind of killing some time, making sure everyone is ready to go. But what's I think important too is to know that there are a lot of options in education. So a lot of times we think of teachers first, and for good reason, because we see them the most physically during the day when we're at school. But hopefully you know that if you're interested in a career in education, there are multiple ways that you can do that. So I thought when I wanted to work in education that teaching was the best way or the way to go. And so I was a teacher for a couple of years and realized that wasn't where my strengths were. I knew I wanted to be an educator, just not a teacher. So I actually spent time at the college side in higher level ed, working as an academic advisor, working with students there in college, and then before coming back to the high school area to work as a counselor. So just kind of keep an open mind as you hear both different career today, different levels. So we have elementary, we have early ed, we have high school, we have classroom teachers, we have other specialists, administrators, hopefully. So we have a range of educators. And so kind of keep an open mind where you think your strengths might be, where you think you might best fit in the whole education piece, if you think that's going to be a career path. So with that said, our format will be kind of the following. All the panelists have been given a set of questions to kind of think about in advance, and they're going to just kind of talk through those answers, including their training, their certifications, their path to where they got to today, things that have made them successful in their career, skills that are required for their job, what gives them the greatest satisfaction in their current position, maybe something that no one tells them, maybe something, I don't want to say what's like the thing you hate the most or anything like that, because that sounds bad, but what are some struggles? What are some things that are tough that you might want to know about? Something that no one told you, possibly. And then some last advice about someone interested in pursuing their career. So they're going to kind of cover those questions in about 8 to 9 minutes or less, but no more than that. Then we'll try to leave a couple minutes for questions, if you have any. If you want to send them directly to me in the chat or to everyone in the chat, you can. Please note that even if you send a private message to somebody else, anybody else in the chat, once the chat ends, I do get a copy of all the chats that went on. So, use your best judgment there. But you can just post a chat to everyone, and I can kind of sort through them and ask our panelists, and then we'll move on to the next person. So with that said, we'll get started. And our first panelist is Ms. Parker. She's a kindergarten teacher from Euclid Elementary. And if you're on, I'm sure you guys know how to use Zoom by now for sure, but if you want to put her maybe on speaker view so you can make sure you're following along, that would be great. The rest of you, you don't have to have your videos on, the other students, if you can, if you want, but just that's kind of where we're at. So Ms. Parker, please take it away, and thank you.
Thank you. So I am also a Hersey grad. I graduated in 2008. I did a lot of the preschool program, and I did the TIP program when I was there. So I had an idea that I wanted to go into education, but I wasn't ready to go away to school, so I went to Harper. When I went there, I was in their education program. So they have some education classes there. And what was nice is I was able to observe there and do some small things in the field. And then from Harper, I transferred to Elmhurst College, where I majored in elementary ed and I had a minor in math. Their education program was great. I actually did some research before I hopped on here today. And one thing I wish people would have told me is once I was there, I minored in math. However, most schools today would like you to have their ESL endorsement or special ed. Every classroom that you have, I've been teaching, this is my 3rd year. Next year will be my 4th. You're always going to have kids that are English language learners or have an IEP. So special ed and ESL are very important. And I wish somebody would have told me, because after I finished Elmhurst, I actually had to go back to get my ESL endorsement. After I graduated Elmhurst, I was applying to about 30 schools. I would interview and I would apply, and I wasn't getting hired. So I was actually a teacher's assistant. And at the time, I didn't appreciate that time as much. I wish if I could tell you now, I use all of those skills, and I am so grateful for that experience, because as a teacher's assistant, I got to see what it was like to work with kids in special ed. I also was, I worked with kids with special ed, but I also worked with kids in reading support. So all of those skills I was able to take and use in my classroom today. So I'm very familiar with interventions to help my kids exceed in reading, and I didn't learn any of that in student teaching. So as much as I was disappointed, what I would tell you is, if you don't get a teaching job right away, to take a teacher's assistant job, because I've learned so much. I teach kindergarten, but I did 3 years at York High School in special ed, and all of those skills I still use today in my classroom in kindergarten. So even though at the time it was stressful because all of my friends were getting jobs, I'm so grateful for that experience. So what I would say is, although the teaching path it can be very competitive sometimes, be grateful and take those teaching jobs that might be assistant jobs, because you'll learn a ton in that. In addition, when I was a teacher's assistant, I was also observed by many administrators. And one of my administrators came to me and said, "We need a teacher in 5th grade." So that's kind of how I led my job to Euclid. Is one of the teachers had a baby early. They needed me to take over. So you just never know where these paths are going to lead you to. I student taught in 5th grade. I did a long-term sub in 5th grade. And then because they were able to observe me, that's how I got my teaching position in kindergarten. So those skills that I learned, like I said, at York and being a teacher's assistant for a reading specialist, have all helped me be successful in my career. And then what gives me the most satisfaction, especially in kindergarten, just seeing their growth from the beginning. I have kids that come in, they don't know how to hold a pencil, and by the end of the year, my kids are writing 4 sentences. So seeing that growth is so exciting, and I'm very data driven. So I love watching the data when they come in. 3 to 4 letter sounds, and now they know all 26 letter sounds under a minute. So for me, that's just fun to watch. Something that is challenging and unexpected, is you need to be extremely patient. So something you don't, when I student taught in 5th grade compared to kindergarten, you don't see the meltdowns. You might see some work refusal, but as a teacher, you need to learn how to work through that. And so when I was at York, the best thing they taught me was less is more. You don't need to constantly be using your voice to motivate a child. So ignoring the behavior and letting the tantrum play out can be very hard and challenging when you have 18 kids and you're trying to keep them focused on their work and you have a kid screaming and throwing things across your room. That's something I never saw in student teaching, and I didn't know, I didn't expect it. But what I've learned is to be patient, and kids don't care what you know until they know you care. So for me, I hug them, I find out their interests, I really get to know them and love them, and then that's how I get to change that behavior. So that is some advice. And I would just say teaching is a lot of work. You need to be organized, but the payoff is so rewarding. And I have just learned so much with e-learning, and I do a lot online now, which I wasn't too comfortable with before. But I think when you're open and honest with your parents, you have to let them know that you're there to help them and you're there with them with this experience. So I've always been open and honest with my parents. I leave an open line of communication. They can call me, they can email me. Being flexible has really helped me have a positive path with my students. So.
Great, thank you. Does anybody have any questions? If you do, please type them into the chat. You can send them to everybody or to me. That way they won't get lost in the mix. If anyone has a question. Not sure if anyone does. We'll wait a couple of seconds. I think one of the things that I took away was the flexibility part. I personally too taught summer school to get experience, subbed a lot to get experience. So the more experience you have, the better. I do have a question from a student. How long did, Ms. Parker, can you, if you didn't say, how long did you do your teacher aid for?
So it took me 6 years to get a job, and there were so many times when I was discouraged and I was so upset because I had dreams. I wanted to get married. I wanted to do so many things, but I wanted a full-time job that was in my career. I went to school I did 4.5 years, and I was getting so frustrated, but I am so grateful for my experience at York. I worked in the life skills program for 3 years and worked with kids with severe special needs. And then I did 2 years with a reading specialist. And then I did a little time at Atia Middle School. So I did middle school. So I really got to see all grades. Even though I'm teaching kindergarten, I was in high school, I did middle school. So that's another thing, is seeing all grades, because when I was student teaching, I was like, I would never teach kindergarten. They're babies. I don't want to deal with babies. I want to teach fractions and I want to do this. And now I can't picture myself teaching any other grade. So I think what I would tell someone is try all the grades, because until you're really into that field, you might not know what you're missing until you're there. And I saw somebody say, what is an ESL? Or ESL, someone's asked what's an ESL endorsement, and that's just for English language learners. So people that come here and they don't know English, and they're learning English. So there's different levels. They test the students when they come in to see where they're at, and some kids will enter a bilingual program where they teach either Spanish half the day and English. but most kids get placed in regular ed classrooms. So you need to be able to connect to those students using visual aids, or maybe slowing down your voice so that they can understand. So those are some things that an ESL endorsement would help you with. I am not sure what an IEO is though. I just have my ESL endorsement.
I don't know if IEP. So yeah, I was
Oh,
gonna say
IEP.
IEP.
So an IEP is an individual education plan. So that would be a student with special needs, and that could be anything from something small, like I have a student with that has seizures, and I just have to keep an eye on her, and she in the classroom is completely functioning fine. To that could also mean a student that needs more break time. So student might have to work for a little bit and then take a 5-minute break. So that's something as a teacher you need to be flexible with, because that's what that student needs. And you'll learn that with teaching, that when kids don't have IEPs, some students need special things to get them through the day. And that's the part of being flexible. For me, I do what's best for them. And I even have a peace place in my classroom where all kids, if they just need 5 minutes to take a break, that's fine, as long as they come back and get back to work. And that seemed to work really well this year.
Great. I have a son in kindergarten, and yeah, I don't know. It's I think each level presents, as I'm sure we'll hear, each level presents its different challenges and different skill sets. But overall, being able to work with a variety of students is really, I think, an underlying skill to have. So I would assume by now, if there was any other questions for Ms. Parker, they would be out here. So we do have another elementary school teacher on the schedule later on, assuming they are here. I'm not quite sure, but so if there are questions, then definitely can follow up with them or ask them to that person later. So thank you so much, Ms. Parker, for coming.
Thank you for having me.
If you all have the ability to do this funny hand clap thing reaction, that would be awesome. And yeah, thank you so much. Great.
You're welcome.
All right. Moving on, a little bit different job in education is that of a school counselor, which I could talk about being a school counselor, but you don't want to hear from me. You want to hear from someone who's probably way better at it and way more experience at it than I. And that is Miss Muck, who is a counselor at John Hersey High School. So Miss Muck, I am going to turn it over to you.
Sure. Thank you. So hi, everybody. I'm Mrs. Muck. I am a counselor at Hersey High School, and I have the distinct honor of following Miss Parker, who was a student of mine and someone that I was able to counsel for the 4 years. So that brings me, when we talk about rewards and satisfaction, right there is proof how much rewards come from a career like this. So I will be honest, I am just seeing you, Mr. C, so I'm going to see if I can put it on. I don't know how to put, so I'm on, but that's okay. Never mind. Trying to change the view. So my certification, and maybe I'll start with my pathway to get here. I started off knowing in high school that I wanted to be around people, and specifically I wanted to be around kids and adolescents, as I was a camp counselor during the summers, and really fell in love with being a camp counselor and found myself drawn to the students who were climbing the trees even though we weren't supposed to. And the campers were not only climbing the trees, they were taking berries and whipping them at me as their camp counselor and not coming down, but I asked them to. And so I really gravitated towards those kids. And when we were on a field trip, I had to carry all the paperwork, and I noticed for a release, if anything were to go wrong and they needed meds and things like that. And I noticed that many of the students or the campers that I enjoyed had what we called was an IEP. And Trish had mentioned that earlier, and that is an individualized education plan where students might have any sort of needs that are that will help them exceed and accommodate their learning styles. So I went to school to be a special ed teacher. I did teach the high school level for about 18 years, 15 years. And then I went into counseling. And the reason I went into high school counseling is that I found myself in the classroom oftentimes kind of deviating from the parts of the cell when students would be asking things a little bit more personal or things that they were struggling with or having problems with. And I didn't feel equipped that I could just give them like my heart-to-heart advice, but not necessarily on how to manage that. So I went back to school to be a high school counselor. The reason I tell you my story and my path is because in the state of Illinois, there was a law at one time you needed to be a teacher first in your undergrad, which is called your BS, which actually stands for Bachelor's of Science. And then you needed to teach. And then we're able to go back and get your school counseling in a master's program, which is an additional 2 years. Now, however, in the last 8 years, the law has changed and you don't need a bachelor's in education. It could be in anything, but you do need 2 years of school counseling and your master's degree to be a high school counselor. I think there's benefits to it. One benefit having your teaching degree is you are then used to working in classroom size and delivering of materials, understanding the dynamics of classroom discipline and behavior and expectations. Also, though, sometimes my job, it's necessary for me to have a good working relationship and rapport with my colleagues, which are teachers. And for that to happen, I think they value that I've been in the classroom for so many years and I'm kind of a veteran, AKA really old and seasoned in that. So then they were more relatable and I can be empathetic to their needs when there might be a problem with a student in the classroom. So I can help kind of bridge that. But again, for the state of Illinois, you currently need a bachelor's in anything and then 2 years in a master's for school counseling. Now, typically, if you know at your ripe young age of 16 and 17 that that's the plight you want to take, I would encourage your bachelor's to be in something in regards to education or sociology or psychology, something in that field to help you, or your liberal arts would probably be your strong areas. With that, I'm a big fan of continuing your education. So getting additional certification, I think, always behooves you and is in your best interest. We have an NBCC, which is nationally board certified, which is a good program, I think, for all educators to have that certification and that kind of plaque on your wall. Along with that, if you want to get into counseling and you really like that therapy a part of it and groups and individual work, going for your LPC, which is your licensed practitioner counseling, or your LCPC, which is where you do tons of therapy and it's all clinical. So those are just additional years of schooling and programming that you would do with kind of almost student teaching where you're practicing out in the community and getting resources that way. Next thing, what are some of the specific skills you need? I would say the number one is people skills. And I kind of think that in life, people skills really can go a long way. So what that entails is being empathetic, being understanding of who you're talking to and where they're coming from, having a really strong ability to be a good listener. Not want to butt in and say what you have to say next, but really listen to where they're coming from and being authentic, showing that you care, having an interest in them, having the ability to have open-ended questions, meaning not yes, no questions, but questions that kind of dig deep, go further, go deeper to kind of understand where the person's coming from, are all great skills. Organization, not my strong point. I'm working on it. After 33 years, I'm still working on my organization. Technology, which, as Trish had mentioned, the Zooming and the remote learning, yeah, that's been learned by fire in the last 8 weeks or 7 weeks, is an important skill to have. in being a high school counselor, and this is different than if I was a middle school counselor or a grade school counselor, we do 3 domains. The first is the academic. So we help plan your 4 years, kind of looking at what you need for graduation requirements. So that's important for technology based on what system you might use. We also do the social emotional, which that is your wellness. How are you doing as a person? Where are you struggling, not maybe even with your peers or your friend group? Could be boyfriend, girlfriend, could be a parent issue. It could be just within yourself, and trying to figure out who you are and trying to get there is a big part of what we do. That's my favorite part on the domains. And the third domain is that college career domain. So really looking post high school, what are your plans? What career path? And all you guys are thinking of the education path. So we just don't say goodbye, see you when you cross the stage at graduation. We hope that during your 4 years, which Trish, love the shout out that you took the tip and took the preschool classes. But again, it's an exposure, it's an experience, and it's just an opportunity to try things and say, hey, yeah, I really like that. I want to learn more, or thank you, no, thank you. After being with Miss Mosier for a semester, I'm kidding, Miss Mosier, but just getting those experiences and knowing if that is something you might want to pursue further. So I think that's the third domain that we have. What's a typical day? A typical day never happens. You never have a typical day. You can have a plan and be able to have your mindset on what you want to do, but you have to be very flexible. Even though you're organized, it's organized chaos. So if a kid comes into your office and they're in tears, that takes priority. Figuring out a schedule conflict comes secondary. So you really have to be flexible as well as patient and understanding. So those would be skills that I think you need. How is it rewarding and satisfaction? I think the biggest reward is seeing you guys grow. I know Trish said just over the kindergarten year, from holding a pencil to writing 4 sentences. For me, it's seeing you guys come in 14, sometimes awkward, sometimes you're really confident, but sometimes not at all, and seeing you guys, that metamorphosis, that growth and development over 4 years in every aspect, not only by height and voice changing and facial features changing, but just how you guys become more confident, more aware, more engaged, and more ready for the future. So that's really very, very special for me to see that, and very rewarding. The challenge, I think, is sometimes when I go in with an idea of what I want to get accomplished that day, and just letting it be, and then being present and here in the moment, and doing whatever that is that's necessary. Sometimes that can be hard when you don't get as much done as you wish you would have in that day. Advice that I have for you, networking. So there's an expression, it's not what you know, it's who you know. You never know when you're going to cross paths with someone again, and you might want to reach out or say, hey, and how they can kind of help you out, or you help them out. So networking is very, very important. Along with that, I would say if it's something you're thinking you're interested in, just like Trish said, look out for those examples and those opportunities and embrace them. And if you don't know what you want, or you're changing your mind, you're not alone. Oh my goodness, you're not alone. Many of us are not sure. We just kind of fake it well. So yeah, that's my advice, but follow your passion, follow your dreams. I'm very proud of all of you guys that we now have, so we had 97, now we're down to 40 since I started talking. No, I'm just kidding. It looks like we have 101 participants. So I'm very proud of each of you guys for joining us today. I think your motivation sometimes must be really challenging to keep on, and you guys are doing a great job. So kudos to all of you out there for watching this, or what you're faking that you're watching it. But I hope you learned something. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
Yes. Great. Thank you. Yeah, if anybody has a question, please type it in there. And for Miss Muck, whether it's counseling or anything like of what she said.
If it's about your schedule, we can Zoom later.
She did mention the 3 parts of counseling: the academic, social, emotional, and college and career. So if you're more of the social, really more like solely social emotional, you may look into a social worker, school social worker, or school psychologist, instead, versus, a counselor. If you're more academic, that's kind of like what I did at the college level as an academic advisor, was just help college students with classes. So there's definitely, different areas related to student services you could do as well.
And a big part of that with the high school counseling is if you really gravitate towards running groups or working individually and helping people through their problems, or if you're someone you find all your friends come to you needing advice and you're comfortable with giving it, and you are good at kind of not spreading the rumor, but just kind of keeping it between the two of you with confidentiality, definitely consider it. We have so many outside resources, and that goes back to that LPC or that LCPC, where you're able to do individual work, but also group work. And there's quite a few right here in our Northwest suburbs that have those opportunities. I don't see any questions.
Yeah, nobody. You covered it perfectly, I guess.
I think they just all logged in and then just ran away.
Sorry, I'm trying to get our next speaker in, so.
I'm going to sign off then.
Okay, thank you so much.
Bye. Stay safe, everyone.
Mrs. Muck, thank you so much. We're trying to get our next speaker in. I don't know if they're having trouble. I just got a call, but sorry about that, everybody. Part of the technology flexibility that we've been mentioning that we have to try to work on. And so I think, as Ms. Muck said, is I'm just going to stall for a couple minutes while we figure things out. Who you know and your experience as well is very important. So when I didn't decide to be a counselor till I was almost 10 years out of out of college, sorry. And a lot of that experience that I had teaching, subbing, coaching, some of those other things really helped strengthen my resume for going into counseling. And when I went to be an academic advisor at the college level, I had never done that before. And they said, well, what makes you think you would be good at this? I could list skills that I had as a teacher, working with students, so on and so forth, as a good skill set. So always be building your skills. We've heard that now from the first couple of people, and taking advantage of different opportunities that maybe you didn't think right away. So I'm trying to see if we can skip while we wait. I know that I don't know, is Miss Barrett here? Does anybody? I don't see her on here. I know that Miss Nikolai from Harper is here. If you are here and able to start, so we don't spend much time, if that is, if you want to, I'm going to unmute you. Are you here, Miss?
Here.
Awesome, thank you. All right, so sorry about that. Thank you for being flexible.
No problem.
We're gonna skip a couple of people down to Miss Kathy Nikolai, who has got a really unique position to talk to us about. She has the preschool early ed experience, but she is also an instructor at the college level. So I'm excited to hear about this as well. So I will turn it over to you.
Thanks. Hi, everybody. Thanks for spending your lunch hour on education-related issues today. As your great teacher said, my name is Kathy Nikolai, and I am a professor of early childhood education at Harper College. So I'm right in your neighborhood. And I've had a very winding road through education. I've had a lot of different jobs. So it's fun to be able to talk about that. And exactly what Ms. Muck said, that it's a winding road, and you don't have to know when you start where you're going to end up. You might just be surprised. So I started back when I was a middle schooler, knowing that I like to work with kids. And so I started volunteering at my church. And I did like a Sunday school volunteer thing, and I loved it. I loved it very much, and I knew. So when it was time for high school jobs, they all related to kids. I even worked at Chuck E. Cheese because I like kids that much. I babysat whenever I could. I got involved. I tried it out. I worked in the preschool in my high school, like a lot of you do too, and knew, boy, this feels like the right thing for me. I did that, and then I went to Northern Illinois University, and I got my bachelor's degree and my teaching license for elementary school. And similar to the first speaker, there wasn't a job for me right away. So I decided to be a sub. And that was a great experience. I dreaded it. I was so nervous. One day I was a kindergarten teacher. The next day I was a high school teacher. It was crazy, but boy, did I learn so much. And I'm so glad that my path took me in that way. I graduated in December. By June, I'd had 7 job offers because people saw me in the classroom. And instead of just being a resume, I was a face. I was a person that they knew already. So that was a really great thing. It was a really great twist that I had not counted on. So I was offered a job, and the principal said to me, you can either teach 5th grade, which I'd been in with student teaching and a lot of sub positions, or kindergarten. So I had the night to think about it, and I chose kindergarten, and really that day decided a lot of the rest of my professional life. So I went and I took that kindergarten job, and I loved those kids. And as soon as I got into the classroom, I realized that I didn't quite have the right training. I went for an elementary degree, but these were little kids, babies still at heart. So I went right back to school, and I got my master's in early childhood education while I was working. And then I dropped down and I taught at-risk preschool in a school district. So those kids were 3, 4, and 5-year-olds and had some identified risk factor already in their young lives. So in my class of 20 students, they spoke 9 different languages. I only knew 2 of those. So it was a fun, interesting several years with those kids. They taught me a lot. Then as it turned out, after I got married and had a couple of kids, I wanted to be out of the classroom for just a couple of years. So I thought, well, I'll go and teach a couple classes at the community college in my neighborhood. And I loved that even more. So I love teaching about teaching. As my 10-year-old loves to say, I'm a teacher that teaches teachers how to teach. It's his favorite slogan. And that fit too. So now I've been at Harper for 12 years, 13 years maybe. And I love you guys fresh out of in higher ed, meaning any position beyond high school, a master's degree, and a lot of variety of experience. They're not looking for someone who's fresh. They're looking for someone who is old and seasoned, usually in higher ed. So the next question says, practices that made me successful. I think like Miss Muck said, being a good listener, being open to new ideas, something maybe that you had thought wasn't a possibility just might be. And an example I'll give here was about 8 or 9 years ago, I was asked to teach an online class. And I said, no way, there's no way, I can't do that. You can't teach teaching over the internet. You need to be with people. It's a people-to-people field. But nonetheless, I took the class, I tried it out, and here I am now. Boy, am I glad I had that training in 2020. Who knew how badly we need it? And we found amazing avenues to teach online. So about 50% of what I do is online teaching. Pre-COVID, I was doing about 50-50, 50 in the classroom, 50 online. And like I said, I didn't think it could work. I didn't think it was a good idea. I didn't think it would work for me, but I tried it and it did. So you never know. I think that no matter if you're a preschool teacher or a college teacher, you have to be approachable. So I've got a lot of students who are afraid to come up to me, afraid to tell me what's going on or what obstacle is in their way. And I try to make sure, again, preschool, kindergarten, 4th grade, college, I try to make sure that I am that open door for them so that we can find out what's stopping the learning from happening and find a workaround for that. So I think being approachable, having compassion, true compassion for students, and genuinely having their best interest at heart those are skills that are critical. What gives me the most satisfaction? I love my job. You know, I think about my girlfriend. It's fun. I love the spirit of collaboration in education at all levels. I think that the people that choose this career, they're working for you. They're working for students. They have your best interest at heart. My administrators, they seek my opinions. They listen to varying viewpoints. When we make decisions in education, we do it as a group. We do it all together. We listen to everyone who has a stake in it. And like I said, your interest, the student's interest is the priority. No one tells you, this morning, I received 2 emails from my college students with notes that made me tear up. So emotional, thank you notes from people. That's what makes my job really rewarding. And some people say it with a note like that. And some people say it, I had a girl sit in the front row and she, all semester, gave me a look like this. You know that look. Every time we would have a class session, she gave me kind of a, I'm not buying it look. The last day of class, she smiled at me on the way out the door. Equally important to me as the long note I get from somebody else. We're reaching students, we're making connections, and it's really rewarding. Again, if they're 4 or if they're 40, it makes no difference. What advice I would give? Just like you wouldn't walk into a clothing store and pick the first pair of jeans off the rack, you got to try things on. So at your age especially, trying on different parts of education is so important. So if you have the opportunity, volunteer somewhere. Volunteer, try it out, see if it's a fit for you. Try different age groups. A lot of my students come to me and they all say they want to teach kindergarten, but they haven't been in a kindergarten class. So we try to get them in right away. First semester, we're going to make sure. And some come back and go, oh, no, thank you. I'd like some older kids, please. And some say, yeah, that was a great fit. So I think trying on before you buy with jeans or careers, very important. If you have the opportunity still in high school, think about a second language, because there's a lot of students out there that we need to reach, and not all of them have English as a first language. So just like your first speaker said, ESL endorsement is wonderful, but also having a second or third language that you speak. That was a big reason I got my first real job, is because I spoke Spanish also. So if you have the ability to continue language growth in another language, that's really makes you very marketable. If you're looking for a job right now, try things with kids, summer camps, things like that. Those are great experience. And then push yourself with people skills. That's what you're going to need, bottom line, more than anything else. So in high school, try a new club, try a service organization, try something. All of those groups are going to increase your ability to collaborate with others and communicate and really work as a team. So, if you're going to go into education, but you feel you're pretty shy, that's okay. We need shy teachers. There's a lot of shy children out there, but you still have to push yourself and work on those people skills. So think about that. But in general, education is incredibly rewarding. It's just a great place to be professionally. And I truly believe we're impacting lives every day in what we do, and we're making this world a better place to be. We need people like you. We need the next generation to come in. People who are willing to give up their lunch hour are the kind of people we need in education. So kudos to you for spending that extra time to think about education as a career path.
Great, thank you so much. Does anybody have any questions? So one question came through, and we might have to unmute some other people. Can District 214 students get an ESL endorsement through Harper while they're still in high school?
Oh, okay. I'm going to say email me and I'll send you to the right person that can answer that. We do offer the coursework for ESL at Harper. It's 6 courses. So I do not believe you could do it while you're still in high school completely. And then also remember that the ESL endorsement is only good for you in addition to your bachelor's degree. So it's not as if you can get that and then start teaching while you're going to university. It has to be on top of a bachelor's degree. So we have a lot of folks that we call them reverse commuters at Harper. They go to ISU or Northern or wherever, and then they come back and do summers with us for those kinds of things, for that endorsement or some general education work. So you're welcome to hand out my contact information, and all of you are welcome to contact me at Harper for questions. If I don't know the answer, I will readily tell you and get you to the right person that can.
Great, thanks. If does anybody have any other questions? If so, please write them in the chat right now while we have Ms. Nikolai here. But I'm sure a lot of you know this, but just in case, the teaching degree is, I think we've said, is a bachelor's degree. And depending on the school and the level, you may either major in education and focus on a certain area, or major in like a subject. Like if you're a high school teacher, like me personally, my major was business. And then I went and got my teacher certification later. So, and then other endorsements, like we said, ESL, possibly special ed, could be additional certifications. And then other careers like social worker, counselor, those are additional master's degrees. And then if you want to go into administration, those are other degrees or certifications. So there's different levels as well. So kind of keep that in mind. So any other questions on the preschool part, or if anyone's thinking of teaching at the college level that we might have? Okay. Thank you very much, Ms. Nikolai.
Thank you.
And I will put your Harper College email in the chat if that's okay.
I'm doing it right now.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. And you can reach out to her there. So thank you.
You're welcome to.
And the email is in there. All right, awesome. Next, we're going to hear from the high school side, and we have Mr. Eric Seyring, sorry if I messed up your name, sir, who is a high school history and economics teacher at Prairie Ridge High School. So I believe I unmuted you. Are you there, Mr. Seyring?
Hi, yeah, I'm Eric Seyring. I teach in Crystal Lake at Prairie Ridge. I have a background like Mr. Chiakulis. I never ever thought about being a teacher until maybe 20 years ago. And then I was a business major, and I learned German, and I spent a bunch of years overseas. But and then I had an undergrad, and then when I decided to become a teacher, I just applied to the university here called National Louis. And it took me a year to get my teaching certificate. And then I student taught. So I've been teaching for 15 years now. Freshman, sophomore history, and so, regular social studies class. And then I teach AP economics also. I also taught German. Some of those people that some people that I work with, if you're taking any languages that are non-Spanish, so French or German, there's a great need for some of those teachers here and there, because there's very few of them. So if you're learning a language that's outside of Spanish, the interesting thing about our country is that there are very few non-Spanish speakers anymore. We have a lot of Polish now, immigrant Russians. So any languages like that would probably be very helpful. But if you know a language that is uncommon, there's a great demand for that. So are we going down the list? If we're going down the list, so I have content area. So I have an undergrad, and then I have some content area tests that I had to take. In order to teach AP, you need to have like 3 classes in your undergrad in order to teach the AP class, something like that. So it's not that much. If now dual credit is becoming a big deal. So if you're really into your content, if you're, math, bio, Spanish, that's a good one. If you're into foreign language, you're into Spanish, and you want to be a foreign language teacher, you can get your master's in Spanish, and then you can teach dual credit in high school. I don't know if anybody's taking dual credit right now, but that's becoming a big deal. And there's very few teachers that are able to teach dual credit, because most of us have a master's in education rather than a master's in economics or a master's in Spanish. As far as specific practices that I think make me or a teacher successful, is that we really have to be very organized, and we have to, because we've got, like you can notice, we probably have 150 students, and a lot of things going on. So you have to be organized, but you have to really monitor yourself, because what we do is generally pretty individual. Mrs. Nikolai said that it's very collaborative. That's true. We collaborate with our colleagues, but when you're in your classroom, it's all up to you. So you got to figure out if you got to speed up or slow down, if your kids are not getting it or not. If you're dropping the ball, maybe you feel like you're getting lazier a little bit and you're mailing it in, and you're feeling like for some reason your kids aren't grabbing it. You got to really be able to monitor yourself. High school is, it's fairly demanding, because we have, as Mrs. Nikolai said, it's very much in communication. We have so many students that have so many, you need a lot of communication skills, but you also need your content skills. So you need to be like, you have to be pretty specialized. You have to understand your content. So it takes a lot of, especially at first, you have to really kind of enjoy learning new stuff. We are always learning new technologies. We're always being challenged by our administrations every year to get better at what we're doing. So it's important that you have good work ethic, and you can work independently, and you can self-monitor. As far as like satisfaction, the satisfaction, I would have never known when I became a teacher that I would enjoy being with the students more than anything. I thought it was always about the content. Oh, I love history, or I love economics, but it's 100% about enjoying the energy and the randomness of being in a chaotic classroom with kids that are scared and are just bouncing off the walls. So you gotta, if you like that, you'll like teaching. If that scares you or weirds you out, if you don't really, that's maybe something that I would advise you, just like Mrs. Nikolai said. If you're want to build up your skills, build up your people skills, join those clubs, lead those clubs, in the summer, volunteer or get a job, in your park district where you're leading a group of kids. Doesn't matter what age, do them all, I guess. Especially if you're thinking about taking, whatever, high school, doesn't matter. When you're in college, get those summer jobs where you're leading the groups that you'll be working with. And then just build up that, just the ability to work with a bunch of kids and really learn to enjoy the quirkiness of these, quirky kids that you're going to have fun with. I kind of ran through it pretty fast. Yeah, I think that's kind of it. Any questions that I brushed over?
Yeah, does anybody have any questions? I know that there was a question that came earlier that could be for any teacher, but it may look different for some grade levels and others. One of them was, one of the perks, so to speak, of being a teacher is that you have summers off. From a high school teacher perspective, do you really have, summers off, or what are you doing during the summertime?
Well, the great thing about teaching is there's so many opportunities to do other stuff. So, well, yes, I at first I was taking a lot of classes in the summertime. You'll do that for the first, 4 years or so, getting your master's degree. But you can also, coach and and that's awesome. So you could do summer camps in the summer. Um, you could, be an assistant coach during the school year, which is a lot of fun. The really cool thing about being a high school teacher or any kind of a teacher is that if something grabs you and you want to do something different, you can just do it. Nobody's telling you you can't. So if you want to, hey, I want to take my kids on a field trip or whatever. I want them to just like write poems today or do movies, videos. You can do it, So I think the teaching gives you a ton of freedom. With that, you just have to make sure that what you're doing is like really benefiting the kids and not yourself. And so for me, I take my summers off. What's big is traveling with kids a lot. There's opportunities to do that, leading groups overseas or around the country, leading clubs. So I've been on a couple of trips. Well, I was on one trip with students. You can do that in the summertime, but really having 10 weeks off to just have that break is fantastic.
Great. I got another question for you. For a high school history teacher, would it be that you would major in history and then get your teaching degree kind of on the either after or at the same time, or if that makes
That's
sense?
a great question. With social studies, if you look at all the classes that social studies teaches, psych and soc and economics, law, business classes, which are kind of not necessarily in, some of them might be in the social studies. If you want to major in something if you're not sure exactly if you want to be a teacher or not, but you want to straddle the fence, you could major in something where you might get a different job, like law or business. And then you could look for a job in business or in the legal system or whatever, or in social work. I don't know if that's, sociology, psych. If you want to straddle the fence and you can do that. I would not major in history without getting the teaching certificate. Because majoring in history, unless you want to go to grad school or something, might not necessarily, majoring in history is fine, but get that teaching certificate at the same time. Or it'll just cost you a little bit more money to do it, like I did, taking a final 5th year to get the teaching certificate. You could get enough where you could teach AP, if you really love history, or you really love, take enough that you can teach AP APUSH would be a great one, or AP Euro, or AP Psych. So you can concentrate whatever really floats your boat, and that'll make you more marketable when you get out, if you can teach an AP class.
Great. Does anybody else have any specific questions about high school teaching? I know that I see a couple other things that I can even possibly address, but I kind of did the same thing. I majored in business, didn't decide to be a teacher until after I graduated college, and then really was only about a year's worth of grad level classes to be ready to student teach. So I was actually certified in about a year and a half after college. But again, that did take longer than if I would have kind of knew beforehand as well. Any other questions on high school teaching? All right, then I think we're good to go. Thank you so much, Mr. Seyring, for joining us. I really appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
All right.
So long.
We did get a question about, is it difficult to find a job in Illinois if you go to school out of state? A lot of that comes down to licensing, and right now, I believe the last I checked, Illinois is pretty open to accepting certifications from other states. So as long as you just get your license transferred over to Illinois, and each state's might be a little bit different, but getting the job, as long as you have the license or get your license in Illinois, it won't really necessarily matter where you got your degree from, as long as you have the license. It's going to more come down to those things we've been talking about, the experience, the certifications you have, all that kind of stuff. There's a note also that's a good thing if you're not looking at the chat to, in terms of the content that you're going into the college first, make sure that they're going to have the courses to take. Some you take your content first and then you take the education classes afterwards. Not every college is going to certify for every degree. So business is a good example. When I got my business degree and wanted to be a teacher, I couldn't just go to any college. There was only a couple colleges really in the whole area that certified for business. So if you know what content you want to teach, definitely make sure the college that you want to go to has that certification, because they may not have it. So those are definitely questions to ask when you're doing your college search. If you're not especially if you're not a senior yet, make sure that you ask, can I get certified to teach this or that, or do you have, what is the process? Because that could make a difference on where you go to school. If they don't have what you want, you may not end up going there. Okay, so our next speaker is going to be Miss Barrett from Hersey as well, and she is a special ed teacher, and I just have to unmute her. I know she was here. Miss Barrett, are you there?
Yes, I am. Hi, everybody. Hope you guys are all doing great. Thank you, Miss Dadzik. It is my birthday today. So she was like wondering if I still wanted to come on. Of course, you know, you still do everything as the day goes on, so you got to keep going up. I am going to share my screen. I made a little bit of like a PowerPoint to help me go through some of these questions. Special ed has a lot of different categories of testing and how to get certified and all of that. So I think, thank you, Gina. Would I be able to share my screen? Can I have that option? If not, I can just push it to the side.
I just made you a co-host, so I think that gives you the power to do so. Do you want to try?
No, it's not the end of the world. I can just push it to the side. I can share this with you later if you want to send. I saw Tracy's comment. I think you made a different Shannon a co-host. I think you made Shannon Costello. I heard.
Oh, I'm sorry. Don't want to do that.
Sorry, Shannon Costello. Okay. Yeah, so now I'm going to do my PowerPoint. So let's see. Share. All right, can you guys see all that? Okay, so becoming a special ed teacher, there's a lot of different qualifications, and I know things have changed. I had a student teacher this past semester, so I kind of went over it with her too, just to kind of figure out what's the new things. So the basic skills test is the basic thing that you have to take when you get into college if you decide to declare special ed. So the nice thing about it is you go to college and you don't declare your major until about, I would say, declared mine like sophomore year. Now, the only thing they didn't tell you, and this is what kind of I got messed up on, was the basic skills test had to be completed to get into the major. and I completed it, but the test results did not come back in time. So I was pushed back a semester. So make sure you take your test when you're supposed to, because that did affect me, and I did not graduate in 4 years. It took me 4.5 years. So that's one thing. It says, like, what would you have done differently? I would have made sure I took my test on time. So don't push that off if they require you to take any testing, and just make sure the dates align. Also to first, before you get into the major two, is on the bottom is maintaining a 3.0 GPA. And I really highly recommend this. I know you guys go into high school and your parents say your GPA counts freshman year. My parents have, told me that my whole year. Freshman year, I struggled in college. I did not have a 3.0. I had a 2.75, and that's not like me. So I know I really had to step it up. So when people tell you freshman year, your GPA counts, but you might not be undecided, just really take it seriously. Try your best. I think my main concern too was I was a very shy student, and I had a hard time reaching out to my professors. So starting my experience was a little rough, but as I got into it, I will tell you, it's amazing. I fell in love with my profession. I love my job. I wouldn't want to do anything else. So, there are ups and downs. There's always going to be hurdles, but don't give up. I didn't give up. I mean, yeah, I made 2 mistakes, my GPA, and I didn't take the test on time. So I don't think you have to take the basic skills test, because I think if you pass the ACT with a certain score, you automatically get in. And I know EdTPA has changed something. So I don't know all the information with that. But you do have to take the assessment test, which is the test that goes towards the general ed curriculum. You take that throughout your time that you're doing your major. And then you also take the special ed education 63 test, which is based off of like all the laws and the best practices and how you would handle something in the situation. And then you have 3 semesters of clinicals. So this is interesting. Every school is probably different, but I went to Northern Illinois, and they were really nice. They gave you a car. So if you don't go to college with the car and like you're supposed to go off and do your clinicals, they did offer that. I don't know if all schools do. So that was a really nice plus. So you'll do practicum teaching. Now the only thing is too with the practicum is setting up where to go. Like I went to school at Northern, and I'm not from that area. So like contacting schools, and as an 18-year-old, I was shy. So it took a little bit of challenging to reach out, but it gave me that experience of also interviewing, because you had to do an interview when you like went to these schools to make sure that you would be okay around the students and, be your best self. And then you do like field day experiences. So that was 2 semesters of my junior year, where one semester I drove out to like Rockford was one of my areas. And then the other area I drove out to was Elgin. And they try to put you in different scenarios. So you'll get to see a whole wide spectrum of students. I did a high school setting. I did a life skills setting. And then I also did a developmentally delayed setting. So it was kind of like a hospital setting where these kids were non-ambulatory, not verbal. And so they lived in this hospital setting. So it's a really great experience. That's what I really liked about our side of teaching, is because with special ed, you start your student teaching / clinicals early on, because you have a lot of areas that you have to cover. And so the nice thing with that is I felt like I got a lot of experience. And then when it came to the student teaching, I did mine back home, closer to home. And I'll explain that why I liked that idea when I get to like the next questions, because that to me was helpful. And I'll explain my situation with that. So that's the requirements to getting in. This is my 10th year teaching, so I have moved around to a few different schools. I taught at Sycamore High School for 2 years. Nothing about it that I didn't like. I loved my job. It's just I wanted to move closer to home. I'm from the area. Well, I'm more down south from Hershey, but I wanted to be closer to home. Sycamore is out by DeKalb. If anyone knows, it's 45 minutes west of where I grew up. And then I went to Elk Grove. And the reason, again, I took a position. I wasn't full-time, but I knew that I had room to grow. So if you go into a job and they don't offer you a full-time job, it's not the end of the world. But I took it, and I moved over to Hershey because they had the full-time position, and then they also had the coaching opportunities. And again, that's what I'll get into about getting involved. So like I said, I went to Northern. I got my degree in Bachelor of Science in Education with my LBS 1. I'm certified K through 12, so I have the option to teach kindergarten all the way up to high school. I knew going into this, I only wanted high school. I wanted to coach. I am a gymnastics coach at Hersey, if you guys didn't know me, and I've coached POMs in the past. I hope to coach diving down the road, so just getting involved was a big thing for me. With special ed, and I've had some issues. I just had a student teacher this semester. Going through my jobs, back 10 years ago, being endorsed was not really a thing. As long as you were highly qualified, you got the position in that field. So I taught math at my first school. And so now I believe some schools would like an endorsement. I'm not sure. I would, research that too, ask your college counselor too, because I was not told to get an endorsement. I looked into it in college, but I didn't. And now that I look into it, I think it's something that most schools are requiring for a job. So sometimes get an endorsement. You can get a special ed endorsement with the math, or you can do a PE, adaptive PE. So there's lots of different options. I've attended lots of workshops. Like I said, I got involved. During my student teaching, I volunteered. I coached to put that on my resume. I've sponsored events just so that I can put that also on my resume. And then my student teaching closer to home. So DeKalb is a small area. And when I worked at Sycamore was a small school. I wanted to put a bigger school on my resume because I wanted to have a lot more experience. So if I had the opportunity to move home and do my student teaching, and if you don't, it's not the end of the world. I just wanted to have like I said, I like to get a lot of experience because it helped me who I am today. Special ed is a fun field. Every day you're thrown into something new and you kind of have to, work with it. And then as I became, throughout my years, I got my master's in counseling. You don't have to get a master's. It's up to you. Schools require you to kind of go back to school and continue your ed to keep your certificate going. I picked counseling because it helps with the transition piece. In an IEP paperwork, a lot of kids are talking about what they want to do with their transition, and having that as an understanding. I understand Naviance now, so when you guys all do your Naviance with your counselors, I understand it. I feel like I can help you with some of that stuff, and I really just enjoy working on transition with students. I push college, I push doing well in school, I push careers, vocational, everything. So I think it just helped me. I could have got a master's in special ed, but I felt like I knew what I was doing. So I think the counseling piece really just helped me. And then I continued on and did some master courses to get more experience. So that's where my professional path has led me today. What specific practices? I mean, again, like I said, you got to be ready to go. Special ed, and it's hard. I will tell you, when you're in school and you're reading a book and they're telling you a scenario, until you're really in the scenario, it's really hard to understand how to take care of that scenario. So, I mean, to me, every day is a new day and it's fun. I wake up, I love my job. And so that's just my main thing is just be ready. Get experience, volunteer now if you can, and just get involved because I just love it. And there's nothing that I think I didn't do that I should have done. I mean, the main thing is my freshman year of college, I should have probably, it's not like I didn't try. I just didn't reach out to my professors. And so for you, if it's, you're scared or nervous, and I always tell students, Harper's not a bad choice your freshman year. Smaller class sizes, if you want to get your gen eds out of the way, because once you get into the special ed major, I don't know how other schools are. I had 15 people in my class. So it was a very small setting. Again, you had to have a 3.0 to get into it. So it kept, everybody to make sure that you were working really hard. But I just loved it. But I felt like I didn't really get to know my professors until sophomore year, and reaching out to them was really big. So self-advocacy. I tell my kids all the time that at school, I still had to learn it too. So don't think like I forced it on you. I'm just sharing a lot of my experiences with you at school because of what things I wish I did better at. The one thing that most have is fashion is when the light bulb goes on, when you're teaching and you get that aha moment, or the kids just get really excited in class. My first year teaching, I had a student named Derek, and nicest kid, but gave me the hardest time. And I was like, what did I get myself into? This kid is just giving me a hard time. And about, I would say 2 years ago, so I haven't taught him in 8 years, he reached out to me and said that I made an impact on his life and that Yeah, I was annoying. Yeah, I was nagging him all the time to do his work. But that aha moment, he realized that I just really cared. And I think you can't give up. If a student is just giving you a hard time, you just can't give up. Develop that positive rapport and just receive those feedbacks. I mean, today it meant a lot to get emails and stuff from students who know it was my birthday. They know that I like celebrating my birthday. So like just knowing that they care, you will get that, and don't give up. Like, it's the best job. It's very rewarding. I don't think we are told that enough. And I think it's an amazing career. The greatest challenge, and I'm going to say sometimes can be the parents. They can sometimes be challenging when it comes to an IEP paperwork. They might not understand where we are coming from with the academic piece, or they, want to change something that we might not agree with, but that sometimes can be challenging because you may not see eye to eye, and you work a lot with the parents in this situation. And then like the students, again, like I said, who want to try and give up, you got to keep pushing that. And then any behaviors, those are sometimes thrown at you, but I think I've just always tried to keep a positive rapport, and I don't like to think of that as a negative. I think of that as just a challenge that we both can overcome and work it out together. And I think this is the last slide. What advice? Again, enjoy it. I mean, I love my job. It's the best thing. Utilize your resources. I gave you my freshman year example. Like, it's okay if you're struggling, but just reach out. Like in high school, teachers are there for you. They really care for you. The same thing as with college, but it might be a little bit different because you don't see that teacher every single day. It might have more people in the classroom, but that's okay. Just email them, go to their office hours. And like I said, grades count. I did have one bad grade in college. I did get 1D. Yes, I did, and it was bad. I retook the course, even though, Ds are passing. To me, that's not something I wanted on my transcript, because when I got interviewed at Elk Grove, that was brought up, that I retook a class and what happened. And I mean, I did retake it, but it did show that I retook it. So they look at your transcript, they look at your grades, and again, like I said, enjoy it, reach out to people, ask questions. Everyone's always here to help you. And even in my career now, I still ask out for help. I think we all go to each other for help. We don't always have answers to everything. But with our profession, we're helping people. We help you. We want to help you succeed. And that's how I think you guys all will be great teachers, if you just continue to do what you should be doing and reach out to everybody. And I think I'm done. Did I talk too fast?
No, you're good. A lot of great practical advice as well. I think a lot of the
that's the special ed side in me too. So like that's why you see that.
Yeah, for sure. We can talk all day about what it's like in the job, but if we don't get there first, kind of nothing else matters. So I definitely appreciate that. Does anybody have any questions for Ms. Barrett, either about special ed specifically, anything else that she said? One thing I will say is that the requirements do change a lot all the time. Whether it's what tests you need and when you need to take them, and when your license works and doesn't. And like Ms. Muck said earlier, sometimes you may need to have been a teacher first and then not. Maybe you need a master's now. Maybe it changes. So kind of keep that in mind and be willing to be flexible too. But any questions here? We'll give everybody 30 seconds to type it in if so. If not, again, kind of keep that in mind. There are and just because you may not want to be a special ed teacher, you definitely will be learning about special ed. You will work with special ed students who have IEPs, individualized plans, and things like that, whether you're a counselor or a regular teacher, so on and so forth. So one of the questions that came in said, does every job check college grades, or does it depend? I mean, I would personally say it depends, but some schools, I know this is my first year at Hersey, when they were hiring my replacement at my previous school, I know they looked at some of the applicants' grades and said, oh, they got a C in psychology, but they want to work with you know, like so it can be tough. So definitely keep that in mind.
Yeah, and it wasn't even a college. It was like a gen ed course that I had to take for one of my electives. So I was shocked that, you know, even they asked about it because it wasn't even a special ed course. And but again, that was the only school that I've had 3 jobs, and that was the only school that asked me about it. But like I said, it's just things that I learned as a person and what I would have done differently. And I know that with other teachers, like you mentioned, special ed, you guys do take a course. Like say you want to be a history teacher, they do still put you through like one special ed course. So it's fun. And you can teach many subjects in special ed too, which can be fun too. It doesn't have to be a set subject. Every year can be different too.
Same thing with counseling. There's a special ed counseling course. So
yeah, same thing. I saw Miss Dudzik's comment.
right, she mentioned her sister got a D in a class in college freshman year, and they asked her in an interview for high school Spanish teachers. So certain jobs can be pretty competitive in certain areas. So they're looking for, you know, every little thing. And especially as we heard Mr. Seyring say on the high school side, if you're teaching a particular content, you have to know that content, you know, backwards and forwards as well. So especially if you want to teach more upper level courses, AP or so on. So they're not going to hire you to be a AP Calc teacher if you got, you know, C's in calculus. Like it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough for you to overcome that. So not only do you have to have a passion for what you're teaching, but have the ability to do well in it as well. So somebody else did comment too, a lot of programs are only available if you have certain GPA. So that is true too. So you want to give yourself more opportunities. Even we talked about who you know, getting a student teaching or internship position. Again, they're going to want to see that you've done well. Even to get those opportunities there, you're going to have good grades and so on. So kind of keep that in mind. If there's no other questions for Ms. Barrett, thank you so much for joining us today. Happy birthday. And thanks.
Thank you guys. Bye. Have a good day.
Next, we are going to move on to another elementary teacher. Miss, I'm sorry if somebody whose name's always messed up, if I mess yours up too, Miss Kusiciel? All right, let me unmute you. What is going on here? Oh,
I think we got it.
there we go.
Hi, you're close. There's a lot of different ways to pronounce it, but Kusiciel. I just say Kusiciel.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
And Ms. Kusiciel is a 4th grade teacher at Olive Mary Stitt Elementary, very close to Hersey. So I will turn it over to you.
Thanks. Okay, I'm having some technical difficulties. Sorry. I'm on my second device.
No
So
problem.
hopefully this one will work. All right. Well, hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to all of you. So thank you so much. And I don't have a presentation to share with you, so you'll just get to see me. But I do have answers to all of your questions, and I'd love to talk more at the end if anyone has questions for me. So like you heard, I am a 4th grade teacher at Olive, and I started teaching at Olive in 2002, and I've only been there teaching, and I had a little bit of a break, and I'll get to that in a little bit, but I am certified to teach elementary ed in the self-contained general education classroom. Hold on, are you hearing some music?
I don't think so. I don't hear it.
Okay, I think it's because I'm on a different device, so I'm hearing some music. Let me know if that's a problem.
Okay.
Okay. Anyway, I do have, like I said, my certificate in Illinois, and my experience has started at Prospect. So I'm a District 214 grad, and I started there, graduated in 1998, attended the University of Iowa, where I got my BA in elementary education and then started teaching right away in District 25. And I actually was a one-on-one teaching assistant for a student with significant special needs. And that was the best experience of my whole career, because I really got to learn a lot about inclusion and different ways to meet students exactly where they're at. And that really helped provide a lot of learning opportunities for me as a classroom teacher. So I started at Olive teaching 4th and 5th grade multi-age, and then transitioned to 3rd grade. And then I had the opportunity to stay at home to raise my young children for a few years, where then I transitioned to the daycare setting and teaching preschool and different classes for youngsters all the way up to kindergarten, and then was lucky to be afforded the opportunity to come back to District 25 as a full-time staff member again. And now I teach 4th grade there. So been really blessed with those opportunities. And as far as trainings go, I really am of the philosophy of being a lifelong learner. So I take a lot of learning on my own and a lot of trainings that way, different webinars and things that I'm interested in. And that's something that I think is what a lot of teachers do, is they pursue their own interests in areas of that they want to be experts in. But the district, whenever you are teaching in a school district, they will provide trainings for you so that you can be up to speed on different curricular materials and different platforms that they might be using. So that's just something to keep in mind, that the district that you will potentially be employed by will provide you those trainings. So you don't have to go get those on your own. And like I said, I did have my initial experience. I actually was a member of like the early teacher academy in the late 90s in District 214, and got to go and teach in a preschool next door to Prospect. At the time, it was a special needs school. And that was a great opportunity for me to really know if I really wanted to pursue the education degree I had planned for when I moved on to the University of Iowa. So that was a great opportunity for me, really set a lot of things in motion for me and how I viewed students and how I wanted to be as a teacher, watching those amazing teachers in those classrooms. And then I know the education pathway in District 214 includes the opportunity to teach in the preschool program there. And I did that too. And it was amazing. I still remember a lot of my children's faces, and I still remember the activities we had to use and do in those classrooms. And then I was able to use that in my pre-service teaching when I was away at the University of Iowa. So that was great. And some other things along my pathway to my current profession is I did a lot of babysitting and nannying, which I think helped to teach me how to be with kids and how to interact with different children and different ages. I also worked for the park districts, the local park districts in town, to be counselors and day camp providers and things. So I think that those experiences early when I was a teenager really helped me to understand what questions to ask, and then gave me a good experience for when I was in my practicums and student teaching. So fast forward a little bit, like I said, I graduated from the University of Iowa. My first student teaching experience was in a 1-2 multi-age, and then when I moved to District 25, I taught in that multi-age setting again, which was an incredible experience to get to teach kids of 2 different grade levels and have students for 2 years. So that was awesome. Let's see. The other thing I want to mention about being a teacher is it does give you a lot of flexibility. You'll catch a lot of flack for maybe getting to have those summers off, but a lot of teachers don't take the summer off. They spend that time learning or prepping or preparing or wrapping up things. And it's definitely the time that you need to unwind, because this job is amazing. I love it. I come back to it. I recommend it for everybody and anybody, but you definitely need that summertime to kind of recuperate. So I just wanted to mention that the flexibility is amazing, but also as a mom, I was able to go and stay home with my kids and get to spend that time with them that I really treasure and found really valuable. And I think when I came back to the classroom, that helped me be a better teacher because I had a different perspective at that point. So just know that right now you're on this precipice of this big moment in your life. And as you move forward, you can make decisions now and think, well, this is it. I have to stay on this pathway. But really, you can make a change and take that perspective you gain back with you into to what you might be doing next. So, but the next question related to specific practices that make somebody successful. And for me, that's always putting my kids first, and both my own children, but also my students more specifically. I just think of them first whenever I'm making big decisions. And regarding decision making in the classroom, whether it's on a micro level or a big macro level, I tend to look at those decisions from many angles to try and anticipate challenges and the needs that might arise so that I can problem solve before anything gets out of control, or just to kind of think about different needs. And also for me to be successful, I really want to treat all kids, peers, and their parents as equal human beings, and not just as a number or as a student in my classroom, but as their own unique person. And then I tackle each day as a new day. I don't hold on to grudges from the past. I don't think about a sibling I might have had in prior years that maybe had some trouble. I don't hold that against the current student in my classroom. So, you know, just kind of keep an open mind and really treat each child as their own. And each day is a new day, because we don't want to hold on to those grudges. It really does impact you on a subconscious level. So you got to try and let that go. Also, like I said, never stop learning. It's really important for you to always keep thinking, keep growing, and take advantage of opportunities that you have, even small ones. And then I want to say too, in the age of social media, you know, it's really hard, but try not to compare yourself to others, and don't compete with the teacher down the hall. I find that for myself, it's really tempting to fall into that trap. But I think for me to be successful, not comparing myself to others and just trusting my own heart and my own gut and what my students need has really helped me be successful in the classroom. And then our required skills, there's so many. Like I said, I teach elementary ed, and the list is really long, but I'm going to just mention a few that are maybe unsaid or unstated as a priority. And that is, you have to have empathy for your kids, yourself, the people around you, and give a lot of grace, and be willing to accept that yourself. Also, it's really important to be creative and to be a problem solver. Right now with remote teaching, it's brand new. A lot of us have never done that before, obviously not in a pandemic situation, but to be a problem solver, I think, has been key for really learning and seeing how to connect with kids in a new way under these circumstances. But that is also true in the classroom in general. Like, you just have to be a problem solver to meet kids where they're at and with what they need. Also, communication is key. So you have to have really good communication skills. And then it kind of goes unsaid in this world right now, but you have to be tech savvy. So I think that those are really the important and kind of unsaid required skills in education right now. And then as far as the satisfaction goes, it's a little cliche, but the light bulb moment, you'll hear probably teachers all over the place talk about that. But it is really a special moment when kids finally get something. So that's an awesome thing. And then when kids finally believe in themselves, I work a lot on this in my own classroom, but I want kids to trust themselves, like trust what you know, use it to your own advantage. And so when they finally start believing that, I think that really makes me smile, makes my heart feel really full. And then I also really enjoy when students come back, even as adults, and they come back and circle around with me and, you know, share a story, and we can laugh as if we were back in that classroom 15 years ago. So that gives me a lot of satisfaction knowing that I've touched kids over the generations and that I get to see them over time. And So that's pretty awesome. As far as greatest challenges go, for me, this is your own self. You will be your biggest challenge. That's because there will be days that you don't believe in yourself, you don't believe in what you're doing, you don't believe you can do it. You maybe don't trust that you have all the skills to do it, to do the job, and to do the job well. You might not feel you are adept at speaking up for fairness or equality in your classroom, but you are. So you just have to believe in you and overcome that challenge. And just remember that every kid in your classroom needs to be seen, they need to be heard, they need to have a place at the table to participate. So we have to open up those doors for them and make sure to be inclusive in that. So that greatest challenge for me really falls on my own self and that doubt that we can sometimes hold as people. So just have to kind of be able to work through that. And then the thing that no one will tell you is that your heart can and it will grow bigger with every class. You don't think it's possible, but it really is. And just be prepared for that, that your heart can grow multiple sizes with each year. And then you may not know this, maybe you do, but you will probably lie awake at night worrying about your kids. You'll celebrate them and all their joys, but you'll also be worried about things that you have no knowledge of and no control over. Do they have enough food to eat? How are they feeling about this? Are they worried about that math test? So those are the things that no one will really tell you when you're in your classes, but those are the things that have impacted me. And then my advice for you, it's pretty simple, but be courageous. Try new things, be innovative, and not just with technology, but in the way you think about this job and this career path. And then lead by example, teach from the heart. Remember that relationships matter above all else, because if you don't have a relationship with your students, there isn't a trust, and without trust, there is very little learning that's going to happen. And remember, you're the only you. So you are the only teacher that can connect with those kids and bring the qualities of yourself that help kind of make the magic of the classroom. So be courageous, trust yourself. You can do it.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Sure.
We do have one question so far. And again, if you have questions, type them quickly. So the first question is, if you do major in elementary education, do you have a suggestion for a good minor to look into getting along with it?
Yeah, great question. So I would say right now, the world of EL is would be a great suggestion for a minor because we have so many students coming in that have a second language. So that would be a great minor to include. Yeah.
And then kind of along with maybe that, you know, we talked about at high school, you know, you kind of major in the subjects you're going to teach, but do you teach different subjects? You know, what subjects do you teach? So,
great. I left that part out.
Core classes, or do you have to know music and PE and art and all that, or how does that usually work at the elementary level?
Yeah, so in District 25, I teach all the core classes, so all the academics. So reading, writing, math, science, social studies, and then our social and emotional learning as well. And then we have separate PE, art, and music teachers. So as of right now, I'm just the core classroom. But it's all day. I have the same class throughout the day. In fourth grade, we do switch for math class. So we have an advanced math class that some students attend, and then we kind of fill in the rest across the grade level. Yeah.
Great.
Sure.
If there's any last questions, get them in real quickly. Otherwise, we have one last speaker coming up. I know we're coming up between the 1 o'clock time where you might have a class to go to, and some of you have been sitting here for almost 2 hours, which is awesome. We haven't lost that many people yet, so stay with us for the last 15 minutes or so. But Ms. Kay, thank you so much for joining us. And
thanks for having me.
All right. And our last but not least, we are going to hear from Mr. Nick Kotis, who is an assistant principal at Odeon Elementary School. Did I say that right?
Yeah, Beaubien,
Beaubien.
Jean-Baptiste Beaubien, one of the early settlers here in the Chicagoland area from long ago.
All right. So yeah, as you mentioned, it's a school in Chicago Public Schools and CPS. Mr. Kotis, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chocolates. Greetings, everyone. I hope everyone's well. I'm very glad to be here, and I hope everyone is safe with everything going on, of course. I'll start with the first question here about certification, training, experience. I kind of combined that with the second part of that question, my journey to where I am today. So I went to Loyola University Chicago. I majored in history with a minor in political science and secondary education, which is what allowed me to teach, for me personally, 6th to 12th grade. It depends on when you get the endorsement to what you can teach. Something to talk about with a university counselor, of course. From there, I began, once I graduated, of course, I began teaching kindergarten to 5th grade special education reading pullout. During that time, I was pursuing my special education master's degree, which is not necessary to be an administrator, but having those extra master's degrees and endorsements do help and make you more marketable. For example, I have another one in director of special education, which is separate, where you can be an administrator for special education in, for example, suburban district. Or I have also an endorsement in gifted education as well. While I was pursuing the special education master's, I ended up switching from the elementary level to the high school level, where I taught for 8 years at Lane Tech College Prep High School, a very famous high school, one of the biggest ones in Illinois. I think it's the biggest under one roof. So I taught history, honors, regular inclusion history for 8 years. And then while there, I pursued my degree in administration. That's a master's program. And that is what you need to become an assistant principal or a principal one day. To become a school administrator, you have to. It could take a year and a half to 2 years. There's usually 1 to 2 internships within that degree. Oftentimes you can do it at your own school. Sometimes they'll want you to go to a different school too. And there's also a summative exam, state exam, and I'm sure all the teachers probably talked about that already too. But all along the way, for whatever degree you get, whether it's just a certificate for teaching or a master's degree, there's state exams every step of the way that you'll have to study for and pass. The next question is, what specific practices have made you successful in your career, and what skills are required for someone in your position? So the key thing, the driving force for all educators, including assistant principals, teachers, aides, everyone, counselors, you have to have a love for children. And then you also have to have a love for education and educating children, understanding what we're really doing here. We're impacting individual lives here, families, communities, cities, states, and countries in the world. It's a reason why we're in this profession. It's a reason why we chose it. We understand the gravity of what we do, and it's so important. And that's the thing that gets me up every morning and drives me to always work on practices, improve the school, improve my own learning at all times. That has to be your undercurrent fueling you as an educator. The skills you need a lot of them, but one of the biggest ones is to stay organized. You have to stay organized. There are a seemingly insurmountable amount of tasks that come up on a daily basis. Probably half of my day, sometimes more, sometimes less, is unplanned. I have an entire schedule planned out, very organized, and all other stuff comes up. So you have to triage it, figure it out as you're going. So some you plan ahead, some you have to plan on the fly. Excellent communication skills, that could be oral, of course, and also written as well, because a lot of times you're going to be communicating and writing through newsletters, emails. Always has to be professional. You really have to have your writing skills well. Collaboration is also a big part of that too, with communication. You have to be an excellent collaborator. Sometimes you're meeting with student groups, parent groups, teacher groups, and you're working together to always problem solve, to bring people into the decision-making process. That's always very big. You have to be very proactive in problem solving, identifying potential issues and solving them ahead of time, but also appropriately reactive when issues do come up, and they will come up. You have to always investigate. You're kind of like almost like a detective when things come up. You have to talk to the right people, get the right information, view video if there's video, view emails if there's emails, and collect all the information and then make a decision to remedy and move forward in a positive direction. You always have to be very transparent. You have to be honest. Everything you do and you say impacts the school culture and climate, so you have to be very careful with what you do and what you say. You have to lead by example along that same thread. And of course, this was mentioned earlier, I heard, but never stop learning. You yourself have to be a lifelong learner, and the love that you hold for learning will come through a teacher, through an administrator, an AP, a principal. It comes through. It shows if you retain that love for learning, and you should, and you have not just for your profession, but also personally too. It's always great to be a lifelong learner. The third question is about the challenges and what gives the most satisfaction. Without a doubt, helping others. I mean, you really have an opportunity as an assistant principal to help. As a teacher, you do, of course, but you have the opportunity to impact even more people as an assistant principal or principal. So helping others definitely is the thing most satisfying. I help students, families, the community, teachers. It's absolutely wonderful, and I love it. Challenge at times you can feel very overwhelmed. It ebbs and flows. It doesn't last, every day but off and on throughout the school year, you have a huge, like I said before, seemingly insurmountable amount of tasks, but you have to keep organized and you have to communicate the entire way with people. Okay, you get an email from someone, something came up. Okay, this can wait. Something else came up involving safety, and that has to be dealt with first. So communicate, and then you take action, you investigate, but you have to stay organized to get through those times. And sometimes you'll end up working late at night. Sometimes the kids will go to bed at home, and then from 9 to 11, you'll be working on stuff for the next day because you didn't have time to finish it that day at school. Sometimes you have to stay late at school. There are going to be a lot of late days. Depending on what's going on. Sometimes it's for something fun like a school dance. Other times it's because you just had so much work. But those times will pass, and then things will return to normalcy. But always remember, if you enter into the profession, whether it's administrator or a teacher or school aide, safety comes first. Safety and security are the biggest parts of running a school. An untold part of the job for an administrator is you wear many hats. There is no job too big and no job too small. If you're walking down the hallway and a student appears to be sick and you're going to a meeting, sorry, that meeting's going to be on hold, or you're not going to make that meeting. You have to attend to the child. Now, all of a sudden, you're not the assistant principal, you're the school nurse. You see, there are going to be things that come up all the time that are going to pull you in many different directions, and you have to be very flexible and ready to make those adjustments. Your job is all-encompassing, essentially. The advice that I would give a person going into the field, well, you have to be caring about students. If that is not your driving force, then you have to rethink why you're entering the profession. Because if that's not your driving force, it's not an easy job. It's very difficult. But when you have that as your driving force, it makes it enjoyable. If that's not your driving force, then I couldn't imagine being in the position, to be honest with you. You have to stay dedicated. I also recommend finding a good mentor, role models, people to learn from, because so much of the profession you're not going to get from a book. You're not going to get from a class professor. You're going to learn on the job. And plus, every school district is context specific. There's different cultures and climates in every single school and every single district across the country. So you have to have somebody, maybe if you're in Chicago, for example, it may run differently than another area. So you have to have somebody who knows, someone who can guide you, someone who understands these things that you only get from actually having experience on the job. Also balance your work and personal life too. You have to have that personal life balance with the work so that you can recharge your batteries after a long day to go home, spend time with the family, your loved ones, or do something that makes you happy to stay balanced. That's very important. And that's it.
All right, thanks. I know it might have been, sorry if the connection was a little bit choppy, at least it was on my end. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Kotis about the administrative part? Can you go, I do, I guess, can you go straight to be a principal, or do you have to teach first or do something else in education?
Great question. Typically, they want somebody with 3 years of teaching experience at university before you can apply for an administrative master's degree, which is called the Type 75 certificate with Illinois. So typically 3 years, but that of course can change, and different universities have different requirements. That's typically what it is. Once you have the degree, you can be an administrator right away, but oftentimes districts have anywhere from 3 to 5 years that they want you to have experience before they hire you as an AP. Sometimes, yeah, well, it depends on the position you're looking for, of course. But yeah, you have to have experience teaching before you can become an administrator. That's for certain.
Great. I know that some of you, like we said, have class in a couple of minutes, but any last questions, get them into the chat here in the next 30 seconds or so. Otherwise, thanks so much. Again, it's great to see that probably 70 to 80 of you at least stayed for the full 2 hours, which is a long time to be sitting. And so, I mean, I'm assuming you're there, those of you who like only have your initial out, I don't really know, but the few of you who've had your camera on and I've seen you here the whole time, that is awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you to Mr. Kotis. Thank you for dropping by and sharing with us. Thank you to all the other presenters. I don't know if any of them are left on here. Thank you again to Ms. Mosher, Ms. Dudzik, Ms. Allen. And thank you again to all of you. So with that said, we are going to end this here with 2 minutes to spare before your 1 o'clock class. Stay safe, stay healthy, reach out to your teachers, your post-secondary counselors, your career advisors at your schools if you need help with any of this. And that's it. Take care. Thank you, everybody. And we are signing off.